Here is where we give you the permission you may not yet have given yourself, to show up and be your most authentic self. You can cry here. You can take your time here. To be you is not a crime here. We are all divine here. We shine brighter when we all shine here. We rise higher when we all rise here. We practice being kind here. We celebrate the fact that we are still alive here. Love, only love, is welcome here. You can make mistakes here. No guilt, blame, or shame here. There's only grace here. We know you by name here. We've been waiting for you. So glad you came here. We hope that you stay here. All that you are can be reclaimed and embraced here. Only love is welcome here.
So bring your pain and bring your sorrow. Bring your hope and bring your fears. And we will wrap our loving arms around you, because love is welcome here.
Here is where we give you the permission you may not yet have given yourself, to show up and be your most authentic self.
Only love is welcome here.
Only love is welcome here.
Good morning, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Nicolette Toussaint, your service associate for today. My pronouns are she and her. I'm joined today by our interim minister, Reverend Barbara Koeman. Today's music is provided by Tad Coriath and the Fellowship Choir, with Julie Morris on the piano. Today's tech team is Herb Axe, Deborah Mensch, and Kathy Partridge. This morning's service is about expanding our welcome and being intentionally inclusive. So as I say our welcome words this morning, I invite you to join me in on the refrain, "You're welcome here." I invite those of you on Zoom to shift into gallery mode if you haven't done so already, and scroll through the screen so you can experience the beauty of this congregation. Those in person, look around and open your heart to welcome everyone here. You are all welcome here. In the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes, gifts and challenges that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living, the places you are from, wherever you have stood on this nation's ladder of class, you are welcome here. With all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. No matter how long you are away, how soon you will return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with a curious mind, a loving heart, and a willing spirit. We welcome you here today. Here at the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, we commit ourselves to being a center for spiritual exploration and justice making. We are committed to anti-racism and anti-oppression work within and beyond our congregation. If you're new here, we're glad you found us and hope that in this community, whether you're with us in person or virtually, you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. Please come back a few times to really get to know us. We have many times during the week when you can experience social connection and spiritual growth. Those on Zoom can check out the links in the chat to help you get connected. Those in person can stop by the foyer, the table in our foyer, for fellowship information and our newcomer form. It's also a QR code in the back of the hymnal. If you'd like to see a simple order of service for today's service on your phone, please scan the QR code that's on the screens. Is it on the screens? Or click on the Zoom chat link. Everyone on Zoom is welcome to stay for casual conversation following the service. If you're here in person, you are welcome to coffee hour in the fellowship hall. If you're joining us on Zoom, please feel free to greet each other in the chat. If you're a newcomer, let us know so we can greet you. We love to know who's among us. Those of you in the sanctuary, take a moment to greet your neighbor. Nice to see you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Reverend Barbara, the grateful minister of this congregation. My pronouns are she and her. It's good to see each of you this morning. If you weren't here, this would be a different congregation this morning. It is our custom to light our chalice, the symbol of our faith of Unitarian Universalism. I invite you to share the words with me. We light this chalice
for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of passion.
out of the flames of fear. We rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all there is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, my friends, we rise.
Out of the flames and into the well is where we're going to go. We're going to take ourselves into that well of goodness, of love, of wholeness, of community, of inclusion, and we're going to spread that with all our might and all our conviction in these times now that call for it more than ever. So let's sing together, We Shall Be Known. We just have words for you this morning. Rise in body or spirit, please, if you will. Join in when you get the hang of it.
We shall be known by the company
The reflection I'm going to share with you this morning, called Hearing the Sweetest Songs, came from work done in the San Francisco UU Church by what was called the Access Committee. We were looking at making the church more welcoming to people with disabilities. Later, this got published in Newsweek, so it's probably the most famous thing I ever wrote. I updated it a little bit. When I was a child, a man brought a big black squeaking machine to my school every year. When he discovered I couldn't hear all his peeps and squeaks, he got excited. And then the school nurse drew a chart with a big, deep canyon in it. And they asked me to listen again, raising my hand when I heard the squeaks. And they were being so nice to me, I wanted to please them. And sometimes I couldn't tell if I heard the squeaks or just imagined them, but I did keep raising my hand. My biological parents said I had lost my hearing to pneumonia as a baby, but I knew I hadn't lost anything. I could hear the jets at Stapleton Airfield a block away. I could hear my cat purr if I put my good ear right on top of him. Later, in middle school, I could even selectively hear Elena in the next room reminding me to do my chores. I wasn't aware of not hearing until I got a hearing aid at the age of 30. It shattered my peace. Shoes creaking, papers crackling, pencils tapping, phones ringing, refrigerators humming, people cracking knuckles, clearing throats, blowing noses. I was constantly startled, agitated, exhausted. Now, with a basis for comparison, I started to discover what I couldn't do. I couldn't identify noises. Once while watching a TV show, watching sports on TV, I kept hearing a metallic boing, boing, and I thought my cat was playing with one of those metal spring doorstops, but the cat was asleep. Finally, I lifted my head just in time to discover that the boing was a referee's whistle. I discovered I could not find a phone ringing in a cluttered room. When home alone, I felt helpless because I couldn't hear the alarm clock, and frightened because I wouldn't hear a burglar until it was too late. I was so frustrated when I missed a job interview due to the damned phone. I had gotten off the subway 20 minutes early, eager, dressed to the nines, but the address I had written down didn't exist. I must have misheard. I searched the street, becoming overheated, late, frantic, knowing that if I confessed to being late because I couldn't hear well on the phone, my chances of getting the job would nosedive anyway. Suddenly, I did feel disabled. For most of my life, I chose to pass as abled, and I thought I was doing a pretty good job. But then a business friend said, "You know, Nicolette, you think you get away with not hearing, but you don't. Sometimes in meetings, you answer the wrong question. People don't know you can't hear, so they think you're daydreaming or stupid or just plain rude. It would be better just to tell them." I wondered about that then, and I still do. Sometimes when I say I can't hear, the waiter will turn to my companion and say, "What does she want?" as though I have lost my power of speech. If I tell, people may see only my disability. Once someone is labeled deaf, crippled, different, that's often all they are. I'm a writer, a painter, a gardener. My hearing is just another part of the package, and I don't mind if you ask about it. In fact, you should ask because it affirms relationships. My walking friends Mary Gibb and Lucy Williams have asked, and now they pull me safely aside if a bicycle's coming up behind us because they know I won't hear. It can be funny, too. Mason and I laughed until we cried after he stomped into our flat and said, "The Minotaurs are taking over the garden." Well, Minotaurs are much funnier than baby tears. Once in a while, the sharing becomes transcendent. One morning we were by the seaside and Mason said, "Hear the bird?" "Bird? What bird?" I listened hard and I heard a faint croaking sound. Then slowly, as I concentrated, I began to hear, or maybe imagine, a distant chirping song. Did I really hear it? Or just hear in my heart what he shared with me? No matter. Songs imagined are songs as sweet as the ones we hear, and songs shared are sweeter still. And Tad has one to share.
Friends, it is time in the service for the sharing of the personal, the joys and concerns, the celebrations and the challenges. I invite you in the room to come forward, as is your habit, through the right side of you, looking at the room, your right side, form a line. Please speak clearly into the mic, and remember, this is a time for the sharing of the personal. This is not a time for announcements, nor for the political. Also, do not forget about coming forward and offering a stone in silence into the bowl. I invite you to come forward for the sharing of joys and concerns, and then also online, we invite the online community to share. And we offer one final stone to represent the unspoken joys and concerns among us. My friends, let us join together in some moments of prayer, meditation, and intentional focus. And given some conversations about this community, which we are engaged in right now, I offer this blessing to the many members of this community of free faith. Blessed are those who arrive early and open the church doors. Blessed are the greeters and all who practice hospitality. Blessed are those who nurture and guide our children and youth. Blessed are those who plan and lead worship. Blessed are those who bring art and music to our life. Blessed are the AV specialists. Blessed are those who manage finances and pay the bills. Blessed are elected leaders. Blessed are committee members. Blessed are those who work for justice. Blessed are those who care for the building. Blessed are those who come to services on Sunday and contribute in myriad other ways. Blessed are those who make sure the church is safe. Blessed are all who place liberating love at our center. Amen. So I invite a few moments of silence for us to sit, each of us in our own way, listening all the more deeply to that still, small voice within as it moves among us. Let us be joined together here and through the online community through a few moments of silence. Amen, and blessed be. And then either continuing your meditation or joining in singing, I invite you to the pastoral hymn, Spirit of Life. The words are on the screen. It's also number 123 in the gray hymnal. Please join in with our meditation hymn. Blessed be.
Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and this community by giving half of our plate away to those organizations that share our values. Today's half plate is for the minister's discretionary fund of the Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church and Throop UU Church in Pasadena, California. Due to the disastrous Eaton fire last month, in which 9,000 structures were destroyed, the churches are providing funds to members and friends to meet basic needs. Your donation today will be greatly appreciated. You can text your donation at the number on the screen, or if you are at the fellowship today, place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously, as you so often do.
For the work and witness of this congregation and this denomination in all their dimensions, your contributions are gratefully received. Thank you. We are in tumultuous times. The ground seems to move constantly under our feet. We want to recognize those realities and yet also keep in aware of the ongoingness, the continuation with the planning, the continuation with the daily. I want to assure you that we are addressing this dichotomy, this paradox, this binary in the leadership we offer this congregation. Last week we addressed the immediate. This morning I'd like to address a more grounding, more universal theme that I like to bring to interim congregations. I would suggest that the theme of class and classism this morning can apply both to the specific and to the ongoing as we develop as congregations. A reading from the book called Elite by my colleague Mark Harris. Unitarian Universalists often assume that UU congregations belong in wealthy suburbs where the grass is greener and the children go to high-achieving schools. This assumption exists alongside the half-defensive, half-optimistic ideology of genuine diversity. We say we aspire to be democratic and inclusive, but we are comforted by our litany of influential and prestigious forebears. Many Unitarian Universalists are torn between who is actually sitting in our pews and who we wish was sitting there. Class is a hard subject to talk about because many of us grew up believing that America has no class structure or that most everyone is middle class. Yet in many ways, class is the most important predictor of what kind of opportunities someone will have in life. As a minister, remember this is the voice of Mark Harris, as a minister, I have learned that rich and poor, educated by traditional means or not, all have religious needs that we can respond to. I believe that at the heart of Unitarian Universalists long to have a faith that learns from all kinds of people, rich and poor. I never want to feel there is anyone, including myself, who does not belong. Words from the Reverend Mark Harris. So in support of the February worship theme of practicing inclusion, as I've said today, let's consider class and classism. Examining class and classism may also expand our perspective on cultural habits, many cultural habits, such as how we realize DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'm guessing everybody is aware is under attack by political leadership in this country right now. Liberal faith of Unitarian Universalism contrasts with fundamentalism, which asserts that there is only one path to religious truth. Unitarian Universalism invites multiple viewpoints and multiple paths, not only in theology, but also in social identity, in welcoming and including all persons who honor UU values, regardless of identities defined by race, sexual orientation, ableness, and much more. The commitment to ARAOMC. How many know what I just referred to? The commitment to ARAOMC. This is one of the, if you will, slogans that I invite you to become more familiar with. The commitment to anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism. ARAOMC. I invite you to become fluent with that. It's a little bit of jargon, but we refer to it often in Unitarian Universalist circles. Anyway, the commitment to ARAOMC, we hope, is well lived by all UUs today. The February Soul Matters materials reminds us of important qualities for being inclusive. Authentic inclusion involves not only inviting persons on the margins into various circles we create and live in. Authentic inclusion also means that once invited in, the marginalized have the capacity to expand the circle outward, holding the potential to affect small or perhaps profound change in what had been closed social systems. There's a short quip about inclusion in the Soul Matters materials, which zooms in on this meaning of inclusion for me. It really caught my eye. By Verna Myers, this quip: "Diversity is being invited into the party. True inclusion is being invited to dance." Inclusion matters. Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists throughout history have stood on the side of inclusion. Inclusion of what lies out of the mainstream, bringing margins into the center, opening up new channels of power. Just to take one example, in UU ministry, this has been our mode of inclusion. In the mid-19th century, we celebrated the first women in ministry, such as Olympia Brown or someone named Lydia Jenkins, who, by the way, I'm going to be speaking about at Loop this Friday evening, the first ordained woman in the mid-19th century. Women ministers expanded ministry considerably. They came to include pastoral care and religious education, which hadn't been there during the male-dominated model earlier in the century. In the 20th century, UUs were among the first to ordain gay and lesbian ministers, again, pulling in from the margins. And then in 2001, the national UU president, William Sinkford, who was the first black national president, created a program for intentional placement of BIPOC ministers. And most recently, our denomination has been proactive in settling transgender ministers. So just as one example of our proactivity in inclusion in the case in ministry. Our support for diversity and inclusion has been strong in matters of race, sexual orientation, and gender identity, confirmed all the more since 2020 when the Commission on Institutional Change published Widening the Circle of Concern. This is an important report, so let me repeat it. Widening the Circle of Concern. I urge you to know something about it. It comes with a study guide. During this jam-packed interim ministry, so far we haven't had time to schedule this curriculum, but I urge you as a congregation to find a way, in the absence of an intentional adult education program, to schedule this class, Widening the Circle of Concern. This and many other similar current denominational projects overlap well with projects and teams that are already here in this congregation, teams and projects such as JEDI, your team for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, already in the fellowship. So consider looking into Widening the Circle of Concern. Today, I want to focus on one of the thornier topics in Unitarian Universalist consideration of inclusion and diversity, that of class and classism. I expect these issues around class are the least talked about, perhaps even the least realized among Unitarian Universalists. Class has been defined by one dictionary as economic stratification created by wealth and privilege. In the past several years, UUs have begun to discuss financial aspects of class more openly, but I would suggest we have a long way to go to practice the multiculturalism we promote in theory, to practice what we promote in theory. In my view, class is the biggest factor limiting numerical growth in this denomination as a whole and in many individual congregations. In the past decade, books about class overall in American culture have appeared on many bestseller lists. A recent study, for example, called White Trash, examines 400-year history of class in America. Or more recently, a movie which I haven't had a chance to see yet, a movie called Origin, tracks the life of Isabel Wilkerson's book called Caste, which compares India's caste system, stratification in Nazi Germany, and racial segregation in the United States. Now, who knows, friends, what bestseller lists on class will look like in just a few short years from now, addressing this new world of heightened stratification we're currently living in. Unitarian Universalists are no exception to Martin Luther King's description of Sunday morning as the most segregated hour in the week. I'm sure some of you have heard that. While UU theology, mission, and values are strongly grounded on diversity, the reality is that in many congregations, participants and project do not represent the diversity we promote or hope for. A 2001 essay called The Meaning of Membership addressed the, quote, disparity between the ideal of pluralism and the reality of uniformity in most congregations. You may have heard the statistics. UUs are overall highly educated, in upper brackets of income and property ownership. Never mind, overall, among the lowest giving in percentage of income to the church. Were you aware of that? During the upcoming stewardship drive, as I get to know you all more, I look forward to learning more about financial generosity here in this fellowship, where I understand last year's pledge goals were wonderfully exceeded. Is that right? Yeah, bravo, bravo to everybody. So at least one generalization about UUs you are refuting. Good for you. Do you recognize any of the following other habits, however, about UUs, either here or in other congregations, which smack of classism? How easily conversations can turn to topics of education and work. Some congregations call orientation classes UU 101. Clearly an academic reference. Lucy shaking her head, no, not here. The fellowship movement of the mid-20th century, which seeded many lay-led congregations, intentionally chose university towns. Now, how do you relate to this tidbit from history? The first fellowship was the Unitarian Fellowship in Boulder, founded in 1948. There used to be some habit in congregations, particularly in New England, to close in the summer because any self-respecting congregant in the greater Boston area goes to Cape Cod for 3 months, right? Where congregations thrive all summer long. Many churches are located in the right areas of town, sometimes on that woody acreage on the outskirts, not likely seen by an average passerby, especially people without cars. But even for those in cars, there is a chance in many congregations, and I've seen this, there's a good chance of missing that small, pale signage, if present at all, that locates the church in the next block. And I have wondered, I don't know yet, I've only been here for a short while, is it possible to have signage out on South Boulder Road advertising UU Fellowship this way? Wouldn't it be great to be able to point folks here to this location? I don't know about the rules and the guidelines in this community, but I would suggest it might be worth looking into. One congregation I served actually had an electronic billboard outside of town pointing to the UU Church. Yeah. And also, I've heard many promos on radio, of course, National Public Radio, for advertising local congregations. I expect a story by Unitarian Universalist Doug Mutter in UU World, the magazine of this denomination a while back, is all too common. He grew up in a blue-collar family in a small town in rural Illinois. His father was lucky enough to have a full-time job with steady income in a cattle feed factory, which meant that he came home most nights smelling of fish oil. As an adult, Mutter moved to New England and joined a UU church in Boston, but he regretted that he rarely saw people like his father at church. Frankly, though, he wasn't sure who his father or his parents would talk to. Once he offered a lay-led service at the UU Church back in Illinois when his dad did come to hear, but his dad never went back again to the UUs. Unitarian Universalism has a class problem, asserts Doug Mutter. While we promote diversity, often we are engaging mostly with people just like us. Mutter's father found more welcome in conservative churches. Perhaps people who have spent their entire lives working in the same factory don't need multiple choices when it comes to finding out how to live a good life. They want assurance that there is a source of good in the world. Mutter asks, does free religion allow us to speak about conditions that take us into less respectable places? Is liberal religion a faith for only the few? Since Mutter's article appeared, practices of diversity and inclusion have increased substantially, but still there is value in each congregation, I would suggest, considering this question. Is this a faith for a few? I would suggest that modern UUs come by classism honestly, as demonstrated by my colleague, Reverend Mark Harris, who wrote Elite, the book I've read from. It was published over a decade ago and became an instant bestseller among UUs. It comes with a study guide, so there's yet another potential for some adult ed programming here with you. Reverend Harris wrote his book from personal experience. He grew up in a blue-collar family. Although from New England, he did not attend Harvard University for seminary, which is one of our principal seminaries, and he mostly served congregations in working-class towns. He was minister in Watertown, Massachusetts, when he wrote the book. Throughout his ministry, he was acutely aware that his own class identity was outside many of the norms of UUs I cited earlier. He also writes about others' experiences of not fitting stereotypes. For example, his brother-in-law visited a congregation, to be nameless. In social time after the service, when this man, his brother-in-law, identified his profession as carpenter, his conversation partner asked why he would want to visit that church, based on the assumption that a carpenter had nothing in common with the culture of the congregation. The member did not even wait to learn that the man was college educated and a fifth-generation Unitarian. Clearly, conversations like this are not putting into practice our principles of welcoming when we welcome all carpenters in the room. In his book, Reverend Harris reminds us of the history of class privilege among Unitarians, for example. By the mid-19th century in New England, Unitarians exercised tremendous political and economic power. In the early 19th century, some farmers attended Boston congregations, but they gradually were replaced by merchants, manufacturers, and professional classes. Unitarians were responsible for many important cultural institutions in New England, but not without stratification, keeping some of those institutions private. For example, when feminist and abolitionist Lydia Maria Child advocated for rights for African Americans, a certain private library in Boston revoked her borrowing privileges. One of the most important breakthroughs in Harris's research, and I call some of you maybe to investigate this, in chronicling Unitarian elitism, was his reporting of fairly widespread support for the eugenics movement among Unitarians at the turn of the 20th century. Some of you may have no clue about that, and it's really a fascinating and disappointing story. In some ways, historical Universalists weren't much better at avoiding classism. True, in the 19th century, Universalist congregations tended to be more rural, of less educated folks, of less wealth than Unitarians, but they still tended to classist habits. While Unitarian P.T. Barnum, did you know that Barnum was a Universalist? As in Barnum and Bailey, yes. While he devoted much of his wealth to serving the people, in contrast, an inhumane work environment created by Universalist railroad magnate George Pullman was responsible for a terrible strike in 1894 when many workers were killed. That's as in Pullman and the Pullman cars in trains. He was a Universalist. By the end of the 19th century, in terms of class, Unitarians and Universalists resembled one another, says Harris. You could not tell the difference, he said, between the two, except that Universalists were more interested in theology and things spiritual. A conservative Universalist might be uncomfortable around a radical Unitarian. Harris is right that a legacy of classism remains in UU culture today. He is also right that more self-awareness of habits of classism can help move UUs beyond this legacy. Many future-oriented denomination leaders are speaking up, encouraging leaders all over to continue the work that has been going on. Who is this free faith for, we've been asking. Who might it serve? So I call each of us, including myself, to reflect on how we communicate messages of class and classism, such as my own reference during this sermon to current bestseller books, to reinforce theological points I'm trying to advance in this sermon, right? Are you sensitive to times when you have not been in sync with experiences of people around you? I'm not at all suggesting that you not be yourself when you come here to this congregation. What I am suggesting is that we heighten sensitivity to any conversations which might not include all the individuals who are present at the table or in the room. So to avoid the story of the carpenter or Doug Mooter's father. I didn't grow up financially privileged, so I tend to be sensitive to stories from others which suggest some financial privilege they may not even be aware of. However, my family believed in educational privilege, and I often check myself about how I acknowledge the range of educational possibilities out there among the people I meet. I strive to not assume that everyone is like me, and I hope that others will be vigilant in not assuming that my experiences or Nicolette's experiences of hearing are just like theirs. This matters, that Unitarian Universalism can be a faith for all, not because we want larger membership for the sake of grander numbers or paying the bills, but because this free faith, my friends, can change lives for the better. This free faith is good for the world, especially right now. As Reverend Harris wrote, we must begin to make the world anew with all kinds of people, not just with the social circles we create. We must practice this faith in ever-widening circles if it is to be truly transformational. And isn't transformation, my friends, one of the important reasons we come to church? In the words of our final hymn, let us remain vigilant to how race and class and so many more social identities unite. Let us be together in inclusion, diversity, and liberating love. May all this be so. And let's continue the music choir. You can remain standing. I invite everyone to join them in Rising in Body or Spirit. Our final hymn is number 113. Words are on the screen or in the gray hymnal, where race and class unite. Let's sing about inclusion. remain risen in body or spirit, let us join together in words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice which we carry in our hearts until we meet again. For those of you who have come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those of you who have come here seeking life, may life return your affection. For those of you who have come here seeking a better way, may that way be found and the courage to take it step by step. When you leave here this morning, my friends, go in peace. When you return to this sacred space, return in hope and in faith and in liberating love. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. Blessed be. I invite you to resume your seats for announcements.
And it's my pleasure to introduce Robin Rathway, who you probably know. She's the president of our board, and she's going to do our announcements and close the service.
Thank you, Nicolette, Barbara, choir, AV team. Our first announcement today is actually from Bob Brodays. Please join us after the service for a discussion on how you can help support our immigrant population. Bob will be presenting several ideas, presenting a continuum from very safe to very risky, as well as other information such as what is the appropriate documentation authorities such as ICE must have to enter premises or a car. This will be in the sanctuary here at 11:30 and on Zoom using the same link. There's also a food drive happening right now. I know a lot of people brought food and toiletries that are going directly to people who are basically afraid to leave their homes right now. And if you didn't bring any food but would like to contribute, there is a GoFundMe for that. And another thing is all of our area food banks and food pantries do not require proof of citizenship to be able to get services. There are a lot of people who are undocumented who are afraid to go out, but if they can get to those food banks, they are allowed to get services if they live in the area, even if they're not documented. Okay. So we also have representatives from the board, COSM, and LDC after the service for coffee and conversation. This is a good opportunity to talk to people. We'll be on the stage in the fellowship hall. All right, and then I have an announcement from the board. It's kind of long, so hang in there with me. Okay. This is also going out as a letter to anyone who wasn't able to attend the service today. This is an exciting time for the future of our congregation. We're working with an experienced interim minister, Reverend Barbara Queeman, who spoke today, and she's doing, besides speaking on Sundays, she's doing the hard work of helping us to get her to know ourselves better as a community and as a church. It sounds a little bit like therapy, doesn't it? She's shining the lights on the neglected or awkward parts of our fellowship. And just like therapy, which is good for us, sometimes it can feel a little uncomfortable. Reverend Barbara is helping us to learn how to be a better congregation and guiding the necessary foundational work of strengthening our organization and preparing us to welcome a new minister after her 2-year interim is complete. We had 16 years with one beloved minister, and we have some habits and challenges that may need to be updated so we can confidently welcome a new minister. Some of these projects are big and involve the whole congregation, like writing the new covenant and the history wall. Some are internal challenges that a few members and staff are working diligently to improve. These include projects like examining our programs, committees, council infrastructure, and improving the flow of communication. There may be some changes. We have some issues. We can't ignore them because we want to be a good pick for a future minister. Just as churches pick a minister they want to work with, ministers pick churches. Ministers will be picking us based partly on the quality of our congregation. And ministers, especially UU ministers, are pretty sharp people, and they prefer the congregation have self-knowledge to ignorance. They'd prefer an imperfect church that is trying over a congregation that is unaware of its rough spots. So after much consideration, I realize I left something out here probably. So we're working on improving those rough spots, and that is a lot of the work of the interim minister that's helping us with that. After much consideration and discernment, your elected board of trustees decided to move ahead with a search process for another minister who will be working with us after Reverend Barbara's 2-year ministry is complete. For this position, we have opted to hire a contract minister with the option to call them after 2 years. The process to hire a contract minister is slightly different, but mostly less demanding than to call a settled minister, which will allow our congregation to focus on leaning into our interim goals before we launch the new search. While calling a settled minister is a traditional process used in UUA churches, the contract to call ministerial choice is supported by the UUA. The UUA Transitions Director, Christine Purcell, is presently supportive of this option for our fellowship. Most ministers, about 75%, who are shopping for a settled ministry position also look at the churches who are searching for a contract to call minister, so we'll have many candidates for our church. And I'd like to emphasize that any minister we hire will be an ordained and fully qualified UUA minister. So the next steps we have is the ministerial searches are done by a church search team. These search teams are either selected by the board or elected by the members of the congregation. Because our congregation, this congregation here, really values diversity of opinion and the democratic process, we'll be striving to include every single member of our congregation in the search team selection process. Presently, we have a task force who will be keeping the congregation informed and educated about this process. Every BVUUF member will be surveyed about who they would like to have on the ministerial search team. Note that this survey process will not start until April. At present, no one has been nominated or selected for the search team. The board and other leaders respectfully ask that you wait until the survey process begins to share your opinion about who would be best to serve the congregation in this capacity. Yeah. So, meanwhile, if you have a strong urge to have your voice heard and earn the respect of the congregation, consider joining one of our committees, help out in the office, volunteer to be an assistant in the Children's Spirit Wing, attend the covenant workshops, step up for some IT assistance, ask to be added to the building event team's hospitality volunteer hospitality list, show up. And if you were asked to serve in an elected position this spring, say yes. If you have any questions, ask one of your elected leaders or a member of the transition team. More information will be forthcoming. Now, leaders and transition team members, could you please stand up? Wave your arms in an undignified manner so we know who you are. So you have questions. These are the people that are going to be formed first, so look at them, ask questions of them. They're all amazing human beings. All right, so we'll have some music. You can sit here and listen to the closing hymn. And then afterwards, go get some coffee, you can talk to your elected leaders, and remember to come back in here for the immigration task for, what do we call it? Immigration Information Program at 11:30. Thank you very much for your patience. Yes.
Know your rights, information, car information
Okay. Thank you. And Becky's saying there's information out in the foyer here too, in the fellowship hall, so help yourself to that information. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
You don't have to stand this one.